Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you talked a lot about understanding the business as a recruiter. What are some things that you do to actually understand the business better and making sure that you're aligning your recruiting objectives or KPIs to that, whatever those strategic areas for the business are?
So the three areas that I focus on is getting an understanding of the compensation of the groups that I'm going to be hiring for, because I'm very much a peer equitable type recruiter. I want to make sure that I'm not giving more, I'm not giving less, and if there is a disparity, that I can speak to it, right? Because I'm the one who enter in the numbers for what that salary should be. That's the first thing. The second thing for me to learn and understand the business is I actually try and learn and become abreast of the product. I am by with nowhere near an electrical engineer. I've been in the technical recruiting space for like 10 years, but I know it and I can talk to it, right? And so oftentimes when you can talk to something, that gives you a better understanding of like the business. And then the third thing that I always focus on is basically where we are today and where we want to go. So if you have an understanding of that, you can foresee roles that are going to come down the future. And when you can foresee roles, you can see your pipeline. Like, hey, this person isn't a great fit, but I have a controls engineer that's worked on powertrains at this organization before. Let's keep them in the bank, for something else, and then push them along.
Got it. Got it. Um, cool. So we got an understanding of like the hiring manager. And one of the things you said is that a lot of these hiring managers don't know what they're really looking for. Uh, and like when I look at applications, I can like tell whether this whether the hiring manager or whoever's involved have like thoroughly thought through the job description. Like there's been job descriptions I read, I'm like, yeah, I'm not touching that. Like I've actually I remember like I know for me when I'm applying to different roles, like sales roles, a big red flag for me is if it's like a startup company and they don't have much branding, right? They don't have much customer penetration, but then you read the description of the account executive and they're like, we want you to be able to do this and that. And it's like, but are you spending the marketing dollars
Mhm.
to actually size me up for hitting
Yeah,
this?
for success. Yeah.
Right. And so it's very interesting when you say that because it's like sometimes I look at a job description, I'm like, wow, has this whoever's written this, have they actually done sales for a startup? Or because doing sales at a Series D company is way different from a pre-seed or a Series A, right?
Mhm.
Um, so what are some things that, and you kind of touched on it, but what are some things that hiring manager can actually do to be better at hiring the right people or just making sure that they understand what they're looking for and what the market is actually telling them?
I think this is a tricky question, right? Because if you have the right recruiter and the right HR business partner, and you're not, a jughead, um, you would be successful, right? Because you lean on those two people because that's their level of expertise, right? If I'm building an electric bike, I'm going to rely on the electrical engineers at Lyft to build that bike. But sometimes hiring managers, they have this notion that I know what I need, I know, but that's not their area of expertise, right? So relying on recruiters and HR business partners, they have the expertise on one, how to write your job description to attract the right talent, but your HR business partners, they understand what is necessary for you to continuously be successful when you get a hire on. And so I always tell hiring managers, trust the people who were hired to do the job. Like if you're a hiring manager, just be a hiring manager. You don't have to be a recruiter too. You don't have to be the hiring manager, the recruiter, the compensation analysis, the workforce planning. You don't have to be all those people. They have people that have been hired with that level of expertise. Rely on them. And if you feel like you deem them not worthy enough, then that's when it's a different conversation that you need to have with yourself. Like, okay, maybe I need a different recruiter. Maybe I need to be within a different organization. Because I remember I was talking to a manager and we were dealing with compensation, and they were like, well, I don't feel like he should have got that comp, and it shouldn't have happened that way. And I was like, well, I'm not really sure because they like, well, I want this person, I want to get approval on it. And they're like, well, you're not a part of, you're not a part of the approval chain. That's the first step. And it was a lot of pushback. And he asked me a question and he was like, what can we do differently in this situation so we wouldn't have it? I said, trust me. I said, because I've hired everyone within your organization and every one of them have their comp ratio line has been between a 1 and a 1.2, meaning that we haven't gone out of band with anybody. Everybody falls within the same space. I said our team has the most equitable team when it comes down to compensation. So trust that I'm not just giving people numbers to give them numbers, right? And so when I said that, he had to go back, of course, and fact check. And he was like, wow. So sometimes you gotta, as a recruiter, you have to like put on the table, like, hey, this is what I do in my job every single day, because hiring managers don't always understand it. And I always tell recruiters, invite your hiring managers into your space so that they can understand. You don't have to alienate them from what you're doing to what they're doing. No, invite them in. If y'all have a meetings of the minds, like I had a hiring manager, he brought me into the lab. And when he brought me in the lab, I was able to like, when I'm talking to the candidate on telephone, I'm like, okay, well, tell me how many, like with the battery supply life that you've worked with, like, what are you putting those products in? I'm able to now have a different conversation because he invited me in. So after that, I invited him in to see, like, how I scope out the questions. How do I, answer the question? Like, how do I understand the answers that are coming from that question? And so it becomes a two-way street instead of just being two people driving down the lane.
Mm, got it. Yeah, because it's hard when I talk to recruiters, right? Because as a recruiter, you're not. I want to make sure I word this the right way. It's like as a recruiter, you're not directly working on creating a product. You're helping, uh, get talent into the company, right? And
Mhm.
I found that for those few recruiters who actually really understand the business, it's like a really different conversation.
It
Um,
is.
it's
So that's
like,
why when you were saying that, I was like, that's my point. Like, I've talked to people on the tech side and I've asked them questions and they're like, whoa, I've never had this question come from a recruiter before. Right.
mm,
So they weren't prepared to have that type of conversation with me. Right. But this is how you are able to really speak to the business. And that's why I always tell new recruiters that are wanting to get into it. If you are hiring a sales job, you should be able to walk in front of an organization and talk about that job, talk about what that day is going to be like. You should be able to talk about it like you're a person that does it, right? You should have that much of an understanding. Now, do I have the capabilities to go and put a electric bike, electric scooter together at Lyft? No, but I had a solid understanding of what that work was going to look like that they were going to be doing. And so that really, like you said, that changes the conversation that you have with the candidate. And most importantly, it changes the conversation that you have with the manager, because now the manager knows that, okay, when DJ's advocating that this person should be hired, DJ knows doggone well that this is the person that should be hired. You get what I mean?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And so what you're talking about is how do you basically as a recruiter develop leverage with the hiring manager, right?
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, so you said mentioned like pay bands. What is pay bands? I think that's very important because it took me. I didn't start hearing about pay bands and stuff in like until like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
pay bands became a really, really big conversation piece. I want to say like 2020, maybe. When Colorado came out with a game changer, like, hey, if this role is, posted in Colorado, or if the role is remote and someone who lives in Colorado can work this position, you have to post the salary ranges for the role, right? So a band is, depending on how the company decides to do it. The band has